This is the Fierce Rival. Mine is chambered in 300 PRC. I was really excited to get this rifle. Did a lot of research. I hadn't spent this much on a rifle before, so it was a risk, definitely. I had almost nothing but issues. Not nothing but issues, but I had some serious issues with this rifle. So I decided to make this video to kind of document the process. Was almost done with it and was ready to call this rifle a dud, when something right at the end, as I was editing it, I noticed something super unexpected. I'm still not a fan of this rifle, but I definitely know a lot more about the strengths and weaknesses, and I think you'll definitely find it interesting. Okay, let me go over first of all the features of this rifle and why I decided to buy it in the first place. It's a carbon stock, super light, super rigid. It has a cool form factor, modern grip, a very thick palm swell, as you can see here, 80 degree, 90 degree angle here on the palm swell. It comes standard with QD flush cups, both here in the back and in the front. It has a pick rail at the end to attach something like a bipod. I attached, as you can see, this is an Arca Swiss rail. Has an adjustable cheek piece. The only thing that I would change about this is it requires an Allen wrench. I would definitely prefer like a button or something much simpler. The action is super smooth. Has a 70 degree bolt throw, a 2-lug bolt. I've actually never used the magazine, so I can't comment about that because all I've done is just testing at the range. Never filled the magazine, just plopped one in there and it fed just fine, but that's not really a very rigorous test. The bolt has a toolless disassembly on it, which is pretty slick. I've had some other rifles that did have an issue and have difficulty in disassembling the bolt, so it's just as simple as that. And then putting it back takes about, what was that, like a second or something like that? That's pretty sweet. Mine has the hinged floor plate, which I prefer to a removable magazine, just because I'm going to use this for hunting and I don't want to bump it and lose the magazine while I'm hunting out in the backcountry. This, as you can see, this is the steel barrel. I think it comes, I think the standard version is the carbon barrel. I just wasn't convinced that the carbon was all the hype, so I decided to get the steel barrel. You can see that mine is fluted with the spiral fluting. This is actually called the Fierce Twisted Rival because of the spiral fluting. It's kind of shallow fluting. It's Cerakoted. This is a 22-inch barrel. I wanted that just so that I could put a suppressor on it. I knew that I was going to lose some velocity, but I was okay with that. It has a pretty substantial directional muzzle brake on it. The trigger is adjustable. It's from Bix and Andy. I adjusted this all the way down to just over a pound, which is just really, really crisp trigger. I'd never heard of Bix and Andy before, but I think it's a great trigger. I'm not all that discerning because this is only my third hunting rifle, but it seems to be a great trigger. The recoil on it, it's surprisingly easy to shoot, and I think that's mostly because of the recoil pad. This is a limb saver recoil pad and this directional brake. It's very manageable. Even my kids can shoot it. So overall, you can see that it has a lot of stuff going for it, and you can see why I decided to pick this rifle. Pretty much everything that I was looking for, and man, I think I just would have fallen in love with this rifle if I hadn't had the issues that I'd had some great reviews, so I'm not quite sure. I think the reviews that I'd heard were with the carbon barrel, and I think that is what the issue is, this steel barrel, and we'll get to that in a minute. Gosh, that just doesn't look like new metal. Took it to the range, it didn't shoot well at all. I put a bore scope down to look at the chamber, and surprisingly, it was rusted and pitted. This was actually the first time that I'd used this bore scope, so I just thought, well, maybe this is what this is what a chamber looks like. So I stuck the bore scope down another of my rifles. This is a Weatherby Vanguard that I put about 1,500 rounds through it. And man, the difference between these two was pretty shocking. So I contacted Fierce. I sent them the video of what I'd seen in the barrel. They handled it great. They They had me ship it to them for free. I replaced the barrel, sent it back to me. The barrel still didn't look like new metal. It wasn't pitted and rusted, but it looked a little bit rusty. But I thought, oh well, if it shoots well, I'll call it good. So took it to the range again, and it did not shoot well. I had to take a break because Vortex just delivered me a repair, and they just sent me this. I think that's pretty cool. Fierce guarantees their rifles, including this one, to 0.5 MOAs. You can see from this target they were able to get a 0.244 inch group. But take a look at that cold bore hole. That's pretty interesting, and it'll become more interesting later in the video. So as I said, I took this to the range after I got this new, the new barrel, and it just didn't shoot well at all. And it wasn't just that it had some good groups and some bad groups. I think it shot one group under 1 inch, and most of them were way over an inch, like 1.7 inch. I'd never experienced that before. I was really frustrated. So I contacted Jim at Backfire, and he recommended that I do a lot more testing before I blame the rifle. And so that's what I've done. So I've spent the last 9 months trying to isolate and eliminate all the factors that could be causing this rifle to shoot poorly. So I performed 6 different tests, shooting 55 different groups and about 170 rounds, but only 6 of the 55 groups were under 1 inch. I tried 2 different types of bullets, Barnes LRX 200 grain, Nosler AccuBond long range 210 grain. I tried 2 different powders, H1000, Rotumbo, a whole bunch of different loads varying the weights of the powder. I did a seating depth analysis. I bought a sled to eliminate any flinch that I could have developed. I bought brand new Lapua brass, and on some of them I turned the necks, and others I didn't turn the necks to see if that would make a difference. And finally, I just decided to try the factory ammo that they had shot. It also occurred to me that the problem could be with the scope itself. It was a brand new loop-holed scope, high quality scope, so I thought that was probably unlikely, but decided to swap the scopes with this one. This is a Vortex Diamondback Tactical 4 to 16 by 44. It's been an awesome scope on a Weatherby Vanguard of mine. And decided that's going to be one of my last tests, is take that to the range. But I also, as I was kind of going through this process, I watched this video by Backfire, and also Ron Spomer did it as well, that talked about something strange that happens when you switch between lead core bullets and solid copper bullets. Some sort of fouling. They didn't seem like they really understood it either. And their solution was just clean the heck out of it right down to the bare steel. So I did that. I think that's about as clean as I can get it. And then I went to the range. I'm now using the Vortex Diamondback 4 to 16 by 44. And I decided to use the same factory load, which is a 212 grain ELDX Hornady Precision Hunter. This is the same round that that Fierce claims to have shot that got the .224 grouping. So I thought that would be the best test, since it would mimic closest to what they were doing. I have a little bit of right to left wind, but at 100 yards shouldn't make a huge difference. And what I'm going to do after this is I'm going to shoot the 6.5 Creedmoor using the loop-holed scope. So first I got to get this sighted in, got to get this on paper, and then we'll shoot some groups. Barrel's nice and cool. Oh boy, that's looking like a good group. Not terrible. Not great either. It's probably around an inch. Where the heck did that go? Whoa, that was a flyer. That last shot was way off the mark. Bullseye. That did not. Well, so far these groups are looking pretty similar to what I've had before. Those first two shots, though, got me thinking. But now I'm kind of thinking that this is just the way this gun shoots. Okay, here's my last 3-shot group. Yikes. All right, judging by that group, and depending upon how the Weatherby shoots, that was not a good test. No, I was definitely wrong about that. This was a completely successful test. Nothing changed in the way that either of these rifles shot after changing the scopes. The Weatherby continued to shoot better than the Fierce, about the same amount. But check out what I noticed when I was editing this video. These 4 shots that I superimposed over each other were under half MOA, and they had something in common. Check it out. Of course, there's a ton of guesswork here. I just found a few graphs online and this old declassified military paper on barrel temperature, and I didn't have a thermometer. But if my guess was right, the barrel temperature is the most important factor here. It was similarly cool, if my guess is right, for shots 1, 2, and 5, and 7, and that for all the other shots, it was just too hot, and it started to spray. Since I'm kind of a nerd, I decided to run a regression to see how the precision of this barrel was affected by what I guessed was the temperature. The x-axis here is the distance from the first 2 shots. So the first 2 shots, the distance would be 0. And on the y-axis is my guess at temperature. If you look above, you'll see that the R² value is 0.82. That's a pretty strong correlation. 0 would mean there's no correlation, and 1 would mean that there's a perfect correlation. Of course, this is still a guess, so I decided to go to the range one last time to see if my guess was right. So for this final test, I put a thermometer on the barrel, and I waited about 10 or 15 minutes in between shots until the barrel temperature was, I think it was around 80 or 90 degrees. Here's the first group. This is not what I expected. That second shot was way off target, about 2.5 inches. Then it corrected to something closer to an inch. Still not a good group, but then this happened. I am upset with myself because I forgot to record some of these. But this is actually 6 shots, 5 of which all touched each other. So that's a 6-shot, half-inch group. Okay, so what the heck is going on here? This was so weird and actually pretty exciting for me to find this, to finally discover something that seemed to definitively describe what was going on with this rifle. It was just driving me crazy for, like I said, 9 months. So it looks like this gun can shoot .5 MOA groups, but it's incredibly temperature sensitive. Even the target that they sent me shows a cold barrel shot and then warm barrel shots. And that I noticed in my groupings as well, that they're, while the barrel was kind of heating up, they kind of sprayed all over the place. But once it hit this consistent temperature, that they would all go through the same hole. But when you're hunting, of course, it's that first shot that you care about the most. It cannot be unpredictable. It can't go, have a predictable pattern of 2 MOA or something like that. That's first shot. Is you got to count on that. And of course, I'd like to have the option of a follow-up shot, but with this rifle, I just don't know really where that follow-up shot is going to go. And especially if I'm out past 300 yards, which I shoot all the time, I just don't feel comfortable shooting this rifle. So to put it another way, it looks like this rifle shoots the first shot in an unpredictable location. The next 2 maybe will go in the same hole, and then after that they'll spray all over the place. Not my idea of a good hunting rifle. So you might be thinking that, sure, any rifle is going to be sensitive to temperature, and that if you let it heat up, it's going to start wandering or walking a little bit, and that's definitely true. But this is what I'm used to with some of my other rifles. This is a 7 Weatherby mag that definitely heats up quite a bit too. And unfortunately, I didn't get the first 2 shots, but here's the third. And I didn't have to wait 7 minutes in between shots. This was about 30 seconds in between each shot. I did have one thought and one theory about this being a steel barrel as opposed to the reviews that I've seen online. I think were all with the carbon barrel. Now I've seen that what happens with a lot of these carbon barrels, that they will put the carbon sleeve in, they say tension, I think they mean compression. Because what happens is, if there's these 2 washers on both sides compressing that carbon, as the barrel heats up, that carbon's going to resist this expansion and the tendency for the physical characteristics of the barrel to change. So I wonder if the fact that this is a steel barrel, who knows where it comes from. I don't know if they made it themselves. Maybe it's just inferior steel and it just expands a lot. But maybe the problem with this rifle that's unique to this rifle is because it's a steel barrel.
Fierce later told me that they do not use what they call tension barrels. And I actually did a tour of their facility. I remember how they did it. It was a resin-soaked carbon fiber that they just wrapped around a steel core. So this theory of mine wasn't completely correct. But the fact that I got 2 of their steel barrels and they both were pretty much garbage, and that all the reviews that I've seen online are with their carbon barrel, tells me that that's a pretty good chance that maybe their carbon barrels are better. But really that's just a guess, because all I have experience with is the steel barrel.
So I was at Shields this week and a random guy heard this story. The people at Shields were interested why I was not happy with my Fierce, because they carry Fierce rifles. And he said, oh man, I have the perfect bullet and the perfect powder that would get that gun to shoot right. And I kind of laughed and shook my head. But it's totally possible. There could be a bullet and a powder combination that could get this to perform well, and I don't have to let it cool down for 3 to 7 minutes. But I shouldn't have to work that hard. I shouldn't have to, spend I think this was like $2,300 on a rifle, and then work that hard to find a combination that shoots predictably. So to summarize, unfortunately, I don't think I can get my money back, because I think technically they're fulfilling legally their end of the bargain. It does shoot. I can get it to shoot 0.5 MOA groups, but for me that doesn't mean it's a good hunting rifle. And you can bet I certainly wouldn't have chosen this rifle had I known that it would have this problem, or the problem with the rusted and pitted out chamber. And so since this is my only experience with Fierce, I definitely would recommend caution before you consider buying from Fierce. And I would definitely recommend against buying this particular model. So I heard back from Fierce. I sent them this video, I wanted to give them an opportunity to review it before I posted it, and to respond, potentially to make it right. I thought it was, at very least, it was a good summary of the issues. And they're in the off chance that they said, "Oh, yes, of course, we'll give you a refund," or whatever it is, I'd send it to them in advance. So what they wanted me to do was to send it back to them and go through the same tests that it had already been through. And that, of course, presumably, I would have to cover the costs of shipping and the time that they spent on it if it passed those tests. And the trouble with that, of course, is that that rifle had already passed all those tests. And I think I had shown fairly convincingly in the video that their tests were inadequate, just didn't cover everything that was important to make that a functional hunting rifle, or really a rifle that used for any purpose. So it just didn't make a lot of sense, and I'll just cut my losses, sell the rifle or something like that. Disappointing experience, but this is closing the book now, and I can move on and not have to deal with Fierce ever again, and I'm sure they're happy not to have to deal with me ever again. Thanks for watching. I'm really interested in your feedback. I put a lot of thought and time and money into this. I'm definitely not interested in becoming a content creator or monetizing these in any way, but I really am interested in your feedback. I wouldn't be surprised if there was something that I missed. So if you see anything, please drop me a comment. Thanks.